Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on our program today. I'm Armando F. Sanchez, CEO, Armando F. Sanchez Production. This show is special. This show is specifically produced and being highlighted for Latina Latino Heritage Month 2017. I've had the honor of doing a bit of research and coming across this wonderful, wonderful project. And the project is called Chicana Por Mi Raza Digital Memory Collective. And it's back east, since we're in California. And I've had the two wonderful members who created this project. I've had a ball talking to them. They're really, really passionate about what they're doing, but I'm not the person who created the project. We're going to interview them. So let me share with you our guest today, Linda Garcia Merchant. She's a graduate instructor and Ph.D. student, Chicana Latina Literature, Digital Humanities. It's a long title. Be patient with me. Department of English, Center of Digital Research in the Humanities, DSI Fellow 2017 from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. She is the chair and founding member, National Advisory Board, Chicana Por Mi Raza Digital Memory Collective. And the digital media partner is Somos Latinas Oral History Project, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Chicana Chicago Collective Project, University of Illinois, Chicago. If you didn't get all of it, neither did I. It's a long title. But in other words, we get the idea that she is really out at the leadership point. And no one can be a leader by themselves. You know, you always need someone else to help you in the leadership roles because it's just a major project. So we have Maria Cotera. She is an associate professor. Her title's shorter. It's manageable, but she's part of it. American Culture Department, Latino Studies and Women's Studies Department, University of Michigan. Thank you, ladies, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to start with the first fundamental question, and what caught my interest is this whole idea of Chicana Por Mi Raza Digital Memory Collective. I mean, it's just a catchy title, but it's not a title. It's sort of more insight into what's going on. And the whole idea of digitalizing and memory collections, sort of I see it as an oral history, but I'm not quite sure. So let's start the interview first. We'll start with Linda Garcia Merchant. And Linda, give us a short background of what this project is.
Well, first, thank you, Armando, for doing this. We both very much appreciate it. Chicana Por Mi Raza started in 2009 with a phone call, literally. Maria was going to collect materials for a class she was going to teach. And we were talking, I don't even remember why we were talking to each other. But she said, I'm going to do some audio interviews in Texas of women from the Partido La Raza Unida Party. And I said, why don't you film them? And she said, well, why don't you film them? And I said this because I am a documentary filmmaker. I made a film that included her mother and my mother. And so Chicana Por Mi Raza isn't just a project that we came to do because we realized that this history was missing. We came to this because our history was missing. Our own mothers were not in the history, or there was mention of them in the second wave feminist movement that both our mothers worked in simultaneously with the Chicana movement. And so Chicana Por Mi Raza was personal. It was a personal project from the start and continues to be. So,
wow. Maria, your take on this?
I mean, so Linda and I shared something in common. Even though I was coming from this as an academic, right? I was looking for a second project. I'd written a book already. I'd gotten tenure, and I really was kind of casting about for a reimagining of what I was doing as an academic, making what I was doing as an academic matter. As academics, were trained to find gaps in the history and fill them. And I knew there was a gap in the history of the Chicano movement and the women's movement because our mothers, the generation of women that were Ruth Rea Mojica Hammer, Linda's mother, and my mother, who were very involved in politics in the 1960s and 70s, were completely absent from the history books. That's why I was in Austin collecting stories, because I wanted to figure out a way to teach my own students what was not given to them in their textbooks on the Chicano movement or on the women's movement. And so, you know, it was very important to Linda and I, like she says, we had a personal stake in this, because on the one hand, we knew that the histories weren't telling the whole story. And on the other hand, we actually knew that there was a very rich story to tell. One thing is to identify a gap. Quite another is to have the access that we had, right? Not only through our personal memories, we knew that they had been involved, but because we existed, we engaged with them in their homes. We knew they had newspapers. We knew they had bumper stickers. We knew they had photographs, writings that they had done, stories that they told us growing up, stories that we lived. And so we knew there was a rich, 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 rich library out there. And we also knew, we came to know very quickly after interviewing those first few women, that all of these women had also kept their mementos, had kept their photos, had kept old newspapers, had kept proposals they had written. And then we started to conceive of the fact that, you know, we have this rich library, like I said, that hasn't been, it's like, almost think about an archaeological site, right? You know,
that's what I was thinking, right? I was thinking that.
You know it's there. It's as if you knew there was a whole city there, but it hadn't been tapped by historians and it hadn't been tapped by teachers. And so that is where we began to think about the idea of, like, you know, Linda and I started thinking, like, I kept telling her, well, you got to make 100 films. And she was like, well, you have to write 100 articles, you know, in order to actually represent what we knew was this rich history. And that is when we thought, well, why not capitalize on the digital affordances of the Web 2.0 age and make a collection of these materials that not just we can draw from for our teaching and for our academic and scholarly and creative work, but that many, many more scholars and people can draw from, so that it's not all on us to tell the story. So we create the resource so that hundreds of stories can be told and a whole new area of research can be developed. So that was really the impetus behind the project.
So Linda, how did you react to her idea that she says, well, you do this, well, no, you do that, and then all of a sudden it spirals into an idea?
Well, I got on a plane and I went down to Austin, and together we came up with this. And it was, yeah, you know, it was Sasquatch. I mean, there are moments when it still is, but I think that's the beauty of it, is that it's always been on the ground, this sort of, in essence, kind of there's a fluidity about it, in that, well, we'll look at it this way at this point. The name has undergone a bit of a change as the idea has developed, right? And so it's always been Chicana Por Mi Raza, but the Digital Memory Collective really, really does help to identify what this means, not just to the women that produce these memories, but the students that get to witness these memories, and to be able to develop this archive. I also have a background in technology, and so as we began to think about this, and that's one of the really great things about this collaboration, is we both have really strong marriageable talents, right? And so it's a good relationship that we have, and a productive one, because we each bring these really unique strengths and this understanding of the organizational abilities that our mothers gave us. In the, you know, my mother always says, I dragged her around to all these meetings, and yeah, it was it did feel that way. But I also learned how to be an activist, how to be a negotiator, how to organize things, how to write grants, how to meet the challenges of exclusion, without getting upset, without saying, oh, yeah, well, okay, fine, we can't do anything. No, it was a matter of, okay, that didn't work. Let's re-strategize, right? For want of a better word, right? You know, I like to use the word, what is it? Strategery. It is all about how to then find a new way to make something happen. And
so, you're negotiating through the problems rather than seeing them as barriers that you can't do anything about.
Exactly. And so because we both share that particular growing up experience, you know, we are the Taylor's daughters, if you will.
I like it. Let me ask you a question. Let me take you back to when this project was first conceived to where you are today. How would you say it's evolved over the last 8 years?
Is that
open question for
okay?
Everyone.
Well, you know, one of the really important things for your viewers to understand about the project is that when we started, Linda was working. She had a real job.
Okay.
I was in the academy, you know, so funding has always been a challenge for the project. And when Linda talks about like facing challenges and barriers, I think that one of the big things that we have faced is figuring out ways forward to fund the infrastructure of the project. Because the thing, you know, I think it's worth noting that, you know, we have catalyzed creative partnerships within the academy, right, in order to make this work. We had a partnership with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign to test drive this data management system that they worked on for the natural sciences. They developed for the natural sciences. We were one of the initial projects to use it for the humanities, and that's where we got our start. They let us use that for free, and they gave us consulting hours. So when Linda talks about Rasquachi digital practice, that's what we're talking about. So we said, okay, we'll take advantage of this, and they had us on their servers. So for projects like this, big, I mean, right now, you asked where the project has, you know, where it came from and where it's gone, where it is now. We have over 7,000 digital items. And these range from multi-page books, full books, to magazines, to photographs, to posters, to newsletters, to syllabi. You know, that is a lot of digital management, right? And then we have around 120 between our oral histories that we've created, but also the partner projects you mentioned that Linda is connected to, Chicana Chicago and Somos Latinas. Both projects are actively collecting, using our model of collection in Chicago, respectively, and in Wisconsin, and they've collected many oral histories. We've used student labor. So we have kind of put this together as a, you know, before Linda was in graduate school, really, you know, as a kind of university partnership through me with someone who was a member of the creative class, right? She was a documentary filmmaker. And we had to negotiate a lot of challenges across those two modalities. And so I don't know where I was going to answer this question, I know. But I mean, I think, you know, the important thing is we have been incredibly attentive to responding to the challenges of funding by figuring out creative ways to get services, for example, in kind. And it has been precisely my location and now Linda's location in the academy that is tremendously resourced, as you well know.
Sure, absolutely.
It's enabled us to create the infrastructure for the project.
Let's, you know, as we're talking more about the project, we should give out contact information to our viewers about where they can find more of this, access this information and learn more about it. Can someone give me a contact information, please?
Yeah, I mean, so the project is a massive collection, and that is behind a login, so scholars can use that and teachers can use that, but our public face of the project, where people can access information about the project and being produced from the project, is our website, and that is www.chicanapormiraza.org. And
that's all one word, right?
It's all one word, and it is our website. It includes teaching resources. It includes essays that students have written based on their research in the project. It includes a list of the collective members. So there's a lot of information, bios on a lot of the women that we have collected oral histories from. So it's a great teaching tool, as well as just, you know, if you're interested in knowing more timelines, mapping, it has so much. It's your single source for Chicana feminism in the 1970s.
You know, Linda, you know, a question strikes me right now from our viewers. The idea is somebody says, why don't we start something similar? You know, it doesn't have to be a huge, you know, database. It's just simply I'm in a small town in Arizona, or I'm in a small town in Colorado, and how do we get started digitalizing our own little history here in our own neighborhood?
Well, it's interesting that you ask that, because more and more we're starting to see those kinds of projects. And it's nice because we'll get a call, we'll get an email that says, hey, I'm doing this. What advice would you give us? And we actually have a how-to guide for people that are interested in doing that. So contacting us would certainly make a difference. The easiest thing to say is, this little thing right here, this smartphone, this is your friend, okay? Because it can shoot video, it can record audio. You can do the recording. You can scan documents with these things now. And so if you are interested in doing something like this, that's a really good place to start. Collecting your own materials, making scans, and asking in your own family. We ask our students all the time as part of the oral history classes, as a project, to go home and ask your parents what they know either about a movement, and then that's when you find out that Tia Cuca or Tia Lencha was marching, in a grape boycott in the 60s, and then that's probably the first time Tia Lencha's talked about that since the 60s, because nobody's, at the time, everybody's like, oh, SS, she's making all of that, no te hagas, right? That's the big thing with us. Don't call attention to yourself. And Tia Lencha felt strong enough about doing that, but hasn't talked about it since, because there's sort of there's an issue within families about it. And so here's this, 14, 15-year-old person or 20-year-old who says, I want to know our family history, and discovering that they have direct relationships to all of these national movement in an aunt or an uncle or a cousin. So
if I can interject a real quick story. I met Sylvia Mendez several years ago. Sylvia Mendez, her parents took on the initiative in Orange County back in the 40s against the school district. Sylvia Mendez, now she was in her late 60s, and her granddaughter was in the classroom. She opened the book to that page, and here's a picture of her grandmother. She's totally shocked. She says, so she goes home and talks to her. No one in the family knew that she was a prominent person in history. So, and then I asked her, I said, well, how come you never told him? She says, well, I just, sort of maundered around. And she says, but I'm not letting that happen anymore. But you're absolutely right. These fantastic stories are in the family, and nobody knows.
That's exactly right. I mean, and it's interesting, because we have an excellent example of that. I'll tell you a story of the archive, because, I mean, we can talk about the archive and its origins all day long, but really the reason it exists is for these stories, right? And because these stories are very meaningful. We interviewed a woman named Nancy de los Santos. She lives in LA. She's a well-known Latina film producer. She produced The Bronze Screen. She happens to be Linda's cousin, and she's from Chicago originally. We were interviewing her in collaboration with the Chicana Chicago project, and we were in LA, and we had asked her, listen, if you have a few things you can bring that we can scan, it would be great. So she's like, oh yeah, I might be able to dig up a few things. I have some photos, a few photos. She arrived with 3 bulging boxes of photos from the 1970s that were documenting. They are some of the only photos I have ever seen that document the boycott, the UFW boycott in Chicago in 1975. Hundreds, we scanned over 2,000 photos and negatives and slides. And Linda, she was heroic. We pulled all-nighters, because we did. All-nighters. All-nighters. Stayed up till 4 or 5 in the morning, just because we were in town just for a few days. So these photos are historic. There is no question. I took these photos to the Walter Reuther Library, which has the largest, in Wayne State, the largest UFW collection in the world. They have the UFW papers. They had not seen photos of any of these events. They have documents that document some of these events, letters and correspondence, but they had not seen photos of them. She documented the pilgrimage of the Texas farm workers in 1977. from South Texas up to Austin, Texas. She documented the first International Women's Year Conference. These photos are priceless. They're a part of our history, and they were sitting in her closet. And she was very modest. She did not consider herself a photographer, but the photos are stunning. And so we just recently did an exhibit in Detroit called Chicana Fotos, Nancy de los Santos, the first ever retrospective exhibit of Nancy's work. And the work is really, really powerful work in collaboration actually with the Reuther Library. They let us do it in their exhibit space, and they lent us documents to support some of the photos. We're looking at writing an NEH grant to take this photographic exhibit on the road so people can see that Chicanas were photographers too. They were activists, they were photographers, but their photos were not credited in many of these newspapers, right?
Yes.
So it's very important, and especially in the context of like UCLA just acquired the huge collection from La Raza newspaper of photography that is really, really significant, right? But in the wake of that, sort of the publicity around that and how important those photos are, we also want to interject, right, the fact that Chicanas were taking photos during this period as well, so that they become part of the story from the get-go and don't get left out again. But it,
you know,
what
you don't, it sounds to me like you don't have a digital library. It sounds to me you have a treasure chest.
Yes, that's how we feel.
That's pretty much how we feel about it, yeah.
Yeah, I could see its value just increasing, and I'm not saying economically, I'm just saying of importance. And so this project has no end. If anything, it's snowballing all the time.
Unfortunately, that's true. That's a very accurate description. We don't know when it's going to end. It's one of those things. Maybe
the irony of that is, the irony of that is when we first decided to do this, we said, okay, it'll take about 5 years, I think was the original projection, right? And at the 5-year mark, it was like, well, okay, we'll do this for a couple of more years. And I think it was last year we both finally realized, yeah, we're in this this is it. We're just going to be doing this forever, but not in the ways we're doing it. The nice thing is, yes, the project is growing, and we now have very specific roles to play that are still this, that still support this collaborative relationship. And so it's nice to see it, that it has gotten to the level that it has gotten. We now have a digital archivist, which is nice. We're now, developing a non-for-profit arm. I mean, we're doing all kinds of things to help sustain ourselves, because of course, one of the challenges again is funding. And so how do you maintain this? How do you steer this big ship? It needs gas, right, to move forward. And so yeah, a lot of what we're doing now, we, meaning Maria and I, is looking towards the future, towards a permanent place for the collection that's accessible, that's developable, that's portable towards the future. We're not always going to be shooting video in these formats. We're not always going to be doing audio in these formats. Technology will change. Platforms will change. And we have to be able to have materials that can be viewed on a smartphone, that can be viewed on a smart TV, that can be viewed on a laptop in a classroom, that has that kind of quality. And so we're still thinking about those things and thinking about the future and availability, accessibility and availability. That's our big strategy now. So,
well, let me sort of give you my thoughts as we're getting ready to close the show, and we need to give out the contact information one more time, because this is just an exciting project. The energy of both of you is just tremendous, and the importance of what you're doing is just, it's overwhelming. And a big applause to both of you. What I see happening is that you're both proactive, you're both taking all your skills, you're passionate about what you're doing, and you think there's an importance that these stories be shared, so that it's accessible to little kids, 5-year-olds, learn about what people did, so that they can use it as a model for themselves. So I just, again, I applaud your leadership. I applaud your energy. I know that, you've been, like you said, you went in LA and you maybe wanted to sit under the sun instead of being in the snow, but you found yourself in a room, taping and recording, and you know, and those are moments that no one recognizes all that hard work that you guys are doing at those moments, but obviously you're doing it. It's a work of passion, and it's a very artistic, very creative what you're both doing. So un aplauso to you and to all the people that are supporting your effort. And I think it takes it takes a village, or sometimes it takes a darn city, you know, to do this kind of project. So one more time, we're gonna please give out the contact information where persons can access, the public can access this project. And then we're going to go through some closing statements.
Okay. It's www.chicanapormiraza.org. It's all one word. And yeah, that's the site where you can go get in contact with us, but also just use the site in, you know, your teaching and scholarship and just for fun.
Just for fun. Okay.
It's fun.
It is fun. It should be. Why not? Who said academia work is always boring? No, you guys are.
It's a fun way to look at it, though. It's a fun way to look at it.
Yeah, you have to. You have to be, because you're creating something new. So you have to sort of look at the new obstacles and look at the new adventures and challenges, and you're doing something very important, both of you. So again, I can't say enough applause from all of us in the world for what you're doing, and you're showing us that we can also do it and must do it as well. So with that, we're gonna do closing statement. Maria, a couple of minutes.
Well,
Your thoughts.
Yeah, it's just very important to point out that our website, you know, when you do go to it, the students that we work with are the ones who are producing the content on our website based on the research that they are doing for us and how they're helping us to manage the content in the archive. And so I just want to do a shout out to those students and that student labor, because the project has, from the very beginning to now, really operated on student labor. We have taken students on each of our trips, and we have, and they are producing content, and they're managing the database, and they're tagging things and creating metadata and all of that. And so really it is a labor of love, and it's really, you know, a collective labor, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda?
We're having somebody's radio, some phone, something went on, so now we're hearing each other. Okay, putting everything away. All right, I don't know what happened. Linda.
Okay. And first of all, yeah, you know, it's like, what does Al Jolson say? My mother thanks you. I mean, we wouldn't be, can you imagine us stopping doing this and having to tell our mothers we stopped doing this? Really, seriously, there's that particular, you know, we have an obligation to women who know we're doing this, you know, so we can stop. I think the thing that is, for me, is so transformative is to witness and watch the witness that students have with these women in these moments of engagement when we're doing the interviews, because we'll have dinner with them afterwards or something, and inevitably a student will say, gosh, that woman was my age when she did whatever she did, and what am I doing with my life? And for me, that's we don't have to do another interview for that to happen, because we are planting seeds with an entire generation of young people who is now going to take and apply the skills that they've heard about other women using to create change in their own lives. And we've seen this happen. We've seen students go into library science and get MLIS degrees because of the work that they've done with Chicana Por Mi Raza. And so to be able to see cultural practice in action from professionals, to be able to witness these experiences with these women, to be able to then apply the knowledge you've learned from these women to your own life. I mean, that's the biggest payoff for me doing this work, because you know, when you talk about wanting to be an activist, I think in that way we are both activists, because we are both championing the abilities of every regular, normal human being, to help them understand that activism begins with a feeling of responsibility towards humanity. And so yeah, and our students come away with that. There hasn't been one that hasn't been moved by it. So yeah, that's, yeah.
I understand that, you know, I don't know if you planned it that way, but it seems that evolved, that you created ambassadors, new ones that, each individual who did a project under yours realizes, well, I can also continue it on my own. And all of a sudden, you're spreading this idea across. So you're seeding a wonderful idea that go out there and record. And, you know, whether it be under your umbrella or create your own, but digitalize it and record it and make it available worldwide. That's what I'm thrilled about this project.
Thank you.
I want to thank both of you for taking the time from your busy schedule, and I'll get you back into your laboratory where you continue digitalizing every work you're doing. And it's very hard work. It's tedious. It's grunt work. You know, you spend a lot of hours. Right now, your desks look really neat, and but when you're working, it's probably pile highs of paperwork. It's pretty normal. Yeah, it's all you slide it off the screen, you know, but it's all sitting there waiting for you to get to it. It's ongoing work, but I think your passion is really comes through here in the show. And again, from all of us in the world, we applaud your work and thank you for making it available and keeping the lessons of real people, the real versions, present in front of all of us. Thank you very much for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Armando F. Sanchez. It's just been a thrill to have both of these wonderful ladies, Linda Garcia Merchant and Maria Cotera. And please go to their website, chicanapormiraza.org, and learn about it. And I think we need to do another show with both of them. Next time I'll have my coffee, so it'll be helpful. And talk about how anyone in the world can get started with their own local project and just sort of how to evolve, sort of how-tos, and learn from their experiences as well. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Maria. And you can contact me if you have any questions about the project, about the show. Again, this is part of the program for Latino Heritage Month 2017. And an aplauso to two leaders who are proactive, taken their skills from academia and applied it to something that all of us can benefit from. Thank you. Adios, ladies.
Thank you. Adios.
Adios.